I've always had this nagging, unpleasant feeling at the back of my skull when I hear liberty activists condemn coercion, or even when they condemn coercive government. Believe it or not, coercion isn't the problem in our society, and neither is government. Theoretically. The problem is the initiation of coercion, whether it's by government or anyone else. It comes off sounding pompous when you say you're against violence and coercion, because, by and large, most people aren't, and most people who say they aren't. If you're against coercion, and you're living your life that way, you're a pacifist. Now, if that's what you are, that's fine, but most people who say they're against violence or against coercion aren't pacifists. So why say it? Most people who say this, what they're trying to say is they're against aggression, the initiation of force, the initiation of fraud. So why not say that? Unless you're one of the 1 or 2% of Americans who are real pacifists. I mean, people who would not fight back under any circumstances. I'm betting that if you're one of the folks who runs around preaching against coercion, you're not one of that 1 or 2%. Ignore what I'm saying if you are. But I just think it's appropriate to say exactly what we mean. Speaking for myself, at least, when I object to something the government does, it's because it involves the initiation of force. Either directly, for instance, by arresting someone because they have pot, or indirectly, by doing an apparently good deed, then charging the taxpayer for it, when the taxpayer may not want the government doing that good deed. If the government found a way to fund some activity voluntarily, then the government would likely have a supporter in me. And yes, some of those activities by the government could be violent, could be coercive, and it would be okay, as long as they're not initiating it, as long as it's proportionate. For instance, using coercion to drag a suspected murderer to a jail cell, using coercion to make a thief give back the marijuana he stole. As long as the operations are funded without the use of force, as long as it's all voluntary funding, there's no problem here. It would be an appropriate use of government. Anyway, I don't know how you want to put it, but when I talk about what I'm against that the government does, I'm against aggressive violence or aggressive acts by the government. I'm not condemning all coercion. It's almost an impossible thing to condemn. Roughly 99% of humans support the use of force in certain narrow circumstances, at least. And I think on this point, for once, the majority of humanity is right. You're gonna get called on the carpet if you say you're against coercion and then figure out some situation in which you support it. So, best not to say it in the first place. I hope I haven't.